The massive view screen on the bridge of the Earth exploration vessel Horizon showed the approaching alien ship. It was unlike anything humans had ever seen before, sleek, silvery, and shaped like a perfect teardrop. Captain Elaine Morrison watched it with a mix of wonder and caution. After decades of searching the stars, humanity had finally made contact with an advanced alien civilization. "Status report," she said, her voice steady despite the historic moment. "The Zenithian vessel has matched our orbit, Captain," replied Lieutenant Greg Peterson from the communications station. "Their translator systems are syncing with ours." Elaine nodded. "Prepare the welcome team. This is what we've trained for." The Zenithian Confederation had contacted Earth just 3 weeks ago, expressing interest in meeting the newest spacefaring species in their sector of the galaxy. Now the first official diplomatic meeting was about to begin. 6 hours later, Captain Morrison stood in the Horizon's main conference room alongside her senior officers. The doors slid open, and the Zenithians entered. They were tall, with blue-gray, skin that seemed to shimmer with metallic highlights. Most striking were the visible cybernetic enhancements covering their bodies, glowing implants at their temples, mechanical joints at their elbows, and data panels embedded in their forearms. The lead alien stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Krelvox of the Zenithian Confederation," he said, his voice perfectly translated through the ship's systems. "We welcome you to the galactic community." Elaine stepped forward and gave a small bow. "Captain Elaine Morrison of Earth, we are honored to meet you." The diplomatic reception that followed was tense but polite. The human crew did their best to make the aliens comfortable, offering refreshments and information about Earth culture. However, it quickly became clear that the Zenithians viewed humans with a mixture of curiosity and condescension. "Your ship's propulsion system is quaint," said a Zenithian engineer named Drexelan, examining the technical specifications on a datapad. "We achieved quantum fold capability 3 centuries ago." "We're still learning," replied Chief Engineer Steve Garcia, with forced politeness. "Our warp drive technology is only 50 years old." Ambassador Krelvox seemed particularly interested in human biology. "No cybernetic enhancements at all?" he asked, scanning Captain Morrison with a device built into his wrist. "How do you compensate for your biological limitations?" "We work with what we have," Elaine replied evenly. "Humans are quite adaptable." The ambassador made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Adaptable, yes, but so inefficient. Observe." He raised his arm, and the metal plating shifted to reveal a complex computing interface. "My neural processor can calculate 1,000,000 operations per second. My vision can see into spectrums your eyes cannot perceive. My strength augmenters allow me to lift 3 times my body weight." The other Zenithians nodded in agreement, some demonstrating their own enhancements. One extended blade-like protrusions from her fingertips. Another displayed holographic data from an implant in his palm. "Most citizens of advanced races upgrade their bodies as soon as adulthood is reached," Krelvox continued. "It seems your species has much catching up to do." Lieutenant Peterson, who had been quietly observing the exchange, stepped forward. "Your technology is impressive, Ambassador. May I ask a question about your computational abilities?" The ambassador turned to him, pleased by the apparent admiration. "Of course. If your processors are so advanced, perhaps you could help us with a problem our navigation team has been struggling with." Greg pulled out a datapad and displayed a complex series of equations. "This relates to gravitational distortion patterns in a nearby nebula. We've been working on it for weeks." The ambassador took the pad, his cybernetic eyes scanning the problem. The other Zenithians gathered around, their implants glowing as they processed the information. "A challenging problem," Krelvox admitted after several minutes. "My systems are calculating possible solutions, but the variables are unusual." While the aliens were still working, Greg Peterson suddenly spoke up. "Would the answer be 3.7249 times 10 to the 12th power?" The Zenithians looked up in surprise. Krelvox checked his calculations. "That appears correct. How did you arrive at this solution without neural assistance? Greg shrugged. I saw a pattern in the equations. The gravitational constants reminded me of something we encountered near Jupiter last year. I just applied the same principles and worked through it in my head. The conference room fell silent. The Zenithians exchanged glances, their implants blinking rapidly as if in private communication. In your head? One of them finally asked. Without technological assistance? Yes, Greg replied simply. Just standard human thinking. Ambassador, Krelvox seemed momentarily unsettled before his diplomatic training reasserted itself. An interesting coincidence. Perhaps you had seen this problem before. Captain Morrison stepped in. Lieutenant Peterson has an exceptional mind, but he's not unique among humans. We've focused on developing our natural abilities rather than replacing them. A quaint approach, the ambassador said dismissively, but ultimately limiting. The future belongs to those who embrace technological perfection. Later that evening, as the diplomatic reception continued in the ship's observation lounge, the conversation turned to galactic politics and culture. The Zenithians described the various alliances and competitions between spacefaring civilizations. The Galactic Olympics will be held in 6 standard months, said a Zenithian cultural attaché, named Mevlin. All new species are invited to participate, though few make an impression in their first century. What kind of competitions are involved? Asked Dr. Linda Ochoa, the ship's chief medical officer. Tests of strength, endurance, intelligence, and skill, replied Mevlin. Though without enhancements, I fear humans would be at a severe disadvantage. Ambassador Krelvox, who had been listening, suddenly stepped forward. Perhaps the humans should attend as observers this cycle. In a few decades, when they've developed proper cybernetic systems, they might be ready to compete. Captain Morrison straightened her uniform and smiled. We appreciate your concern, Ambassador, but if Earth is invited, we will certainly participate. With unaugmented bodies? Krelvox asked incredulously. You would embarrass yourselves. Maybe, Elaine replied. Or maybe we'll surprise you. Humans have a long history of exceeding expectations. The ambassador's cybernetic eye implants flickered, with what might have been amusement. Then consider yourselves officially invited. The Zenithian Confederation will sponsor Earth's first delegation to the Galactic Olympics. He raised his glass in what appeared to be a toast, to new experiences and to learning one's place in the universe. As the Zenithians departed the next morning, returning to their gleaming ship, Captain Morrison stood with her senior staff in the docking bay. Well, said Greg Peterson quietly, they seemed nice. Steve Garcia snorted. If by nice you mean condescending as hell. They've never met humans before, Elaine reminded them. They don't know what we're capable of yet. Dr. Ochoa looked thoughtful. Those cybernetics were medically fascinating, but did you notice how they seemed to rely on them for everything? Even basic calculations. That could be an advantage for us, Elaine said. They expect us to think like them. She watched as the alien shuttle detached from the horizon and glided toward the Zenithian mothership. I think humanity is about to make quite an impression on the galaxy. 6 months passed quickly on Earth as the best athletes, scientists, and problem solvers were gathered for humanity's first Galactic Olympics team. The massive space station that hosted the event orbited a gas giant with rings that glowed purple in the light of a distant sun. It was here that representatives from over 30 spacefaring civilizations would compete. The human transport ship docked at the station, and Dr. Natalie Rivera led the team through the airlock. As the chief physician for the Earth delegation, she had personally examined every team member, confirming they were at peak human condition, without any technological enhancements. Remember, she said to the group, we're representing all of humanity here. Some species have been competing for thousands of years. Joseph Winters, Earth's marathon champion, looked around in wonder at the enormous docking bay filled with ships of all shapes and sizes. No pressure, right? Captain Elaine Morrison was waiting for them, having arrived a week earlier to handle diplomatic arrangements. Welcome to Olympic Station, she said. The opening ceremony begins in 3 hours. I should warn you, we're causing quite a stir. How so? Asked Natalie. Word has spread that humans are competing without cybernetics. Most species here can't understand why we would choose to remain unaugmented. As if to prove her point, a group of aliens walked past, their bodies gleaming with metallic implants and glowing tech. One pointed at the humans and made a buzzing sound that their translators didn't catch. The Earth delegation was assigned to quarters in the visiting team's section. As they settled in, a tall Zenithian appeared at their door, Ambassador Krelvox. Captain Morrison, he said with a slight bow. Your competitors have arrived safely, I see. Yes, Ambassador. May I present Dr. Natalie Rivera, our team physician, and our athletes and specialists. The ambassador's eyes, now clearly artificial with glowing blue irises, scanned the group. I see no sign of cybernetic upgrades. Surely you've reconsidered your position? All participants are allowed standard performance enhancements. We've decided to compete as we are, Natalie replied. Humans have our own unique advantages. Krelvox made a sound that might have been a sigh. As you wish. I fulfilled my duty as your sponsor by informing you of the options. He turned to leave but paused. Oh, and you should know, the Aldebaran Collective has taken particular interest in your team. They've dominated the endurance events for 3 centuries and find your natural approach amusing. After he left, Joseph Winters looked concerned. The Aldebarans? They're the most heavily augmented species in the competition, Captain Morrison explained. Some say they're more machine than biological now. Great, muttered Joseph. The opening ceremony was a dazzling display of light and sound. The human delegation marched behind the Earth flag, feeling small compared to the other teams with their advanced technology and centuries of experience. The Aldebarans were particularly impressive, tall beings with sleek silver and black enhancements covering most of their bodies. An alien official with 4 arms welcomed all competitors in the common galactic language, declaring the games officially open. The first events would begin the next morning. The endurance trials were held in a massive environmental arena that could simulate different conditions. Joseph Winters represented Earth in the marathon event, which would be run in standard gravity, with elevated temperature to increase difficulty. Joseph stood at the starting line alongside 15 aliens of various species. The Aldebaran competitor, a being named Xirax, was covered in cooling systems and had what appeared to be mechanical legs from the knees down. You are the unaugmented human? Xirax asked through a translator. Joseph nodded. That's right. Your species has courage, if not wisdom, said the Aldebaran. I will try not to lap you too many times. The starting signal flashed, and the race began. As expected, several competitors with obvious speed enhancements pulled ahead immediately. Joseph maintained a steady pace, knowing that the true test would come later in the race. By the halfway point, the temperature in the arena had risen to uncomfortable levels. Joseph was sweating heavily but continued his practiced rhythm of breathing and movement. Then he noticed something interesting. Several competitors were slowing down. The Zenithian runner's implants were blinking red. The competitor from a crystal-like species had stopped entirely, their cooling systems visibly failing. Even Xirax was having trouble. The Aldebaran's mechanical legs continued to function perfectly, but the biological parts of the body were showing signs of heat stress. The cooling system seemed to be working overtime. Joseph kept running. His body was uncomfortable, yes, but it was doing what human bodies had evolved to do over millions of years: regulate temperature through sweating. He passed one competitor, then another. In the final quarter of the race, only 5 runners remained on course. Joseph was in 4th place with Xirax just ahead of him. Then, with a shower of sparks, one of Xirax's knee joints seized up. The Aldebaran stumbled but kept moving with a pronounced limp. Joseph pulled alongside him. Are you all right? My systems are overheating, Xirax replied, surprise in his voice. How are you still functioning? Your body temperature must be dangerous. We're built for this, Joseph said simply, and pushed ahead. In the observation area, Trazanar, a Zenithian official, watched with growing interest. He turned to Dr. Rivera, who was monitoring Joseph's vital signs. Your runner's core temperature is elevated, but his systems continue to function efficiently. How is this possible without regulation tech? Human bodies self-regulate, Natalie explained. Our sweating mechanism, combined with our cardiovascular system, creates a natural cooling process. And it works in varying environments? It does. We evolved on a planet with many different climates. Our bodies adapt. Joseph finished the race in second place, behind only a gaseous species that seemed unaffected by heat.
When Xerax finally crossed the finish line in fifth place, the Aldebaran approached Joseph with a new look in his electronic eyes. Respect. Your natural cooling system outperformed my cybernetics, he admitted. This has never happened in my
competitive experience. Word of the humans' performance spread quickly through the station. When Olivia Sanchez entered the swimming arena later that day, spectators filled the viewing areas, curious about these strange, unaugmented beings. The aquatic race required competitors to navigate an underwater obstacle course. Most aliens wore breathing apparatus or had gill implants. Olivia, however, simply held her breath. She cannot possibly compete, said an Aldebaran official to Captain Morrison. Your human will drown. Free diving is an ancient human skill, Elaine replied. Olivia can hold her breath for over 7 minutes. The Aldebaran scoffed, but when the signal came, Olivia dove into the water with the others. Her natural swimming, motion, honed through years of Olympic training on Earth, was smooth and efficient compared to the sometimes mechanical movements of her competitors. She navigated the obstacles with grace, and when she emerged at the end of the course in third
place, the station buzzed with even more interest in the human team.
Scan her, demanded the Aldebaran official. She must have hidden tech. The scans were performed, revealing exactly what Dr. Rivera had claimed. Olivia was completely unaugmented, just a human in peak physical condition. That evening, Trasnar approached the human quarters asking for a private meeting with Dr. Rivera. I have questions about human physiology, he said. Many questions.
Tension filled the air of the Olympic station as the third day of competition began. The human team had gained unexpected recognition after their performances in the physical events. Now the cognitive challenges were about to start, and the
cybernetically enhanced aliens were certain they would reclaim their superiority. Danny Franklin, Earth's top computer scientist, sat in the preparation room, reviewing notes on his datapad. Unlike his alien competitors, whose heads were filled with neural processors and data links, Danny relied solely on his natural brain. He looked up as Dr. Rivera entered the room. How are you feeling? She asked. Like I'm about to take a math test without a calculator while everyone else has supercomputers, Danny replied with a nervous smile.
Just remember what Captain Morrison told us. They think differently than we do. That could be your advantage. The cognitive event was held in a large circular chamber with viewing areas around the edges. In the center were 20 stations where competitors would face increasingly difficult problem-solving challenges. Danny took his place at one of the stations, aware of the murmurs from spectators who had heard about the unaugmented humans. The Aldebaran competitor, a being called Nexar, was placed at the station next to Danny's. Nexar's head was enlarged by visible processing units, and fiber optic cables ran from the back of his skull to his fingers. I calculate a 0.003% chance of you advancing past the first round, Nexar said to Danny. No offense intended, simply probability. Thanks for the encouragement, Danny replied. The first challenge appeared on their screens, a complex pattern recognition problem. Danny studied it carefully while Nexar's eyes flickered rapidly, his processors obviously working at incredible speed. The Aldebaran submitted his solution first, followed quickly by most other competitors. Danny was one of the last to finish. To everyone's surprise, all competitors advanced to the next round. The solution was straightforward, Nexar commented. A simple algorithm could solve it. Danny nodded but said nothing. He had noticed something about the problem that bothered him. There were multiple correct patterns, not just the obvious. 1. The second challenge was a multi-dimensional logic puzzle. Again, the cybernetically enhanced competitors worked through it with incredible speed, their implants glowing with activity. Danny sketched notes on a small pad, thinking through the problem step by step. This time, when the results were displayed, 3 competitors were eliminated, but Danny remained. The challenges continued, growing increasingly complex. After each round, more competitors were eliminated. By the 6th round, only 5 remained: Danny, Nexar, and 3 others from highly technical species. The final challenge appeared on their screens, a simulation of a chaotic system that needed to be brought into balance. Danny studied it carefully, recognizing that it resembled weather patterns or ecological systems from Earth. The solution wasn't in finding a perfect algorithm, but in recognizing which elements could be adjusted to create natural harmony. While the others worked with precise calculations, Danny thought about how natural systems found their own balance. He made adjustments based on intuition and pattern recognition, rather than pure mathematics. When he submitted his solution, the simulation stabilized into a beautiful flowing pattern. The judges announced the results. Danny had taken 2nd place, behind only Nexar. The Aldebaran seemed genuinely confused. "Your solution was unconventional. My processors analyzed 12 million potential approaches to find the optimal one. I just looked for what felt balanced," Danny explained. "Sometimes there's more than one right answer." Nexar's eyes flickered. "But your approach was not mathematically perfect." "No, but it worked. Sometimes good enough is better than perfect, especially when perfect takes too long or costs too much." Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Trazinar had been granted access to the historical archives about Earth. The Zenithian official had become increasingly fascinated by humans after their unexpected performances. What he found in the archives troubled him deeply. Humans had a violent history, centuries of warfare, constantly developing deadlier weapons. Yet they had also created beautiful art, music, and literature. They had nearly destroyed their planet before coming together to save it. They were contradictory, unpredictable, and adaptable in ways cybernetic species had forgotten. Most concerning to Trazinar was a simple question. If humans could achieve so much without cybernetic enhancement, what would they become if they ever decided to augment themselves? He was deep in these thoughts when an alert sounded throughout the station. There had been an incident in the human quarters. Trazinar hurried to investigate. When he arrived, security officers were already there. Captain Morrison stood with Dr. Rivera, both looking concerned. A section of wall paneling had been removed, exposing the environmental controls for the human living area. "What happened?" Trazinar asked. "Someone tampered with our air supply," Captain Morrison explained. "The oxygen levels were set to gradually decrease overnight." "While we slept," Dr. Rivera added. "If our engineer hadn't noticed his fitness trackers showing low oxygen readings, we might have suffered brain damage or worse." Trazinar was shocked. "This is a serious violation of Olympic rules. Do you know who did this?" "The security system was disabled for exactly 12 minutes, said Captain Morrison. "Very professional work." A security officer approached them. "We found this near the access panel." He held up a small device with the distinctive markings of Aldebaran technology. "That proves nothing," said a new voice. Nexar had arrived with several other Aldebarans. "Anyone could have planted that to implicate us." "Perhaps," said Captain Morrison carefully. "But it's interesting that you knew what it was before anyone said." The tension in the corridor grew as more people gathered. The human team stood together, while representatives from various species watched with interest. The Aldebaran delegation looked increasingly uncomfortable. "This matter will be investigated fully," said the chief security officer, a member of a reptilian species. "Until then, guards will be posted at all team quarters." As the crowd dispersed, Trazinar pulled Captain Morrison aside. "I believe you are in greater danger than you realize," he said quietly. "Some species fear what humans represent." "Which is what?" she asked. "A different path. Most spacefaring civilizations have followed the same evolutionary course. Biological limitations overcome through technology, natural selection replaced by designed improvement. But humans..." He paused. "Humans show there might be another way."
That is threatening to those who have invested everything in their cybernetic future. We're not trying to threaten anyone, Captain Morrison replied. We're just being ourselves. That may be the most threatening thing of all, said Trazanar. Be careful, Captain. The cognitive events have shown that humans can match our best minds. The physical events proved your bodies have capabilities our ancestors lost generations ago. The next competition is combat simulation. Is that a warning? She asked. It is concern, Trazanar replied, from someone who is beginning to respect humans very much. Later that night, Captain Morrison met with the human team. We need to be extra cautious, she told them. It seems our success is making some people nervous. Should we withdraw? Asked Olivia. No, said Captain Frank Delgado, who was scheduled to represent Earth in the combat trials. If we leave now, they'll think they've won. Besides, I've been watching their combat techniques. They rely heavily on their tech, which makes them predictable. Just be careful, Captain Morrison warned. This isn't just about winning medals anymore. It never was, said Dr. Rivera. It's about showing the galaxy what humans can do. The combat simulation arena was the largest venue in the Olympic station. Spectators from every competing species filled the viewing areas, eager to watch the event that traditionally drew the most interest. For many species, combat prowess remained a point of cultural pride, even after centuries of peaceful cooperation. Captain Frank Delgado prepared in the staging area, wearing only the standard protective gear provided to all competitors. Unlike his opponents, who were connecting weapon systems and activating combat enhancements, Frank had only his natural abilities and years of training in various Earth martial arts. You understand the rules? Asked the event official, a tall being with 4 arms and metallic skin. The simulation will create virtual enemies and obstacles. Competitors are scored on effectiveness, efficiency, and survival time. Actual harm is prevented by the safety systems, but you will feel simulated pain. I understand, Frank replied. He watched as an Aldebaran competitor entered the arena. The alien's body transformed as weapon systems emerged from hidden compartments in his limbs. Blades extended from his forearms, and his eyes glowed with targeting systems. The simulation began, and holographic enemies appeared around the Aldebaran. He moved with mechanical precision, his cybernetic systems calculating optimal attack patterns. His performance was impressive. Enemies fell quickly as he moved through the course with ruthless efficiency. When the Aldebaran finished, he exited, with a confident stride barely acknowledging Frank as they passed each other. Human, the Aldebaran said with a dismissive nod. Try not to embarrass yourself. Frank entered the arena, feeling the eyes of thousands of aliens upon him. The simulation activated, and the environment changed to resemble a ruined city. Holographic so. Enemies began to appear around him. Some looked like soldiers, others like monstrous creatures. Instead of charging forward like the Aldebaran had done, Frank assessed the situation, noting cover positions and enemy patterns. When he moved, it was with deliberate purpose. The aliens watched with surprise as the human used the environment to his advantage, conserving energy and making each action count. In the control room, Trazanar observed with Captain Morrison and Dr. Rivera. Your warrior fights differently, Trazanar said. The Aldebaran eliminated more enemies in the first 2 minutes. Frank isn't trying to eliminate every enemy, Captain Morrison explained. He's accomplishing the mission with minimal engagement. As they watched, Frank encountered a situation where 3 enemies guarded a narrow passage. Instead of fighting them directly, he created a distraction, drew them out of position, and slipped past while they were confused. He's adapting to their patterns, Trazanar realized. Our cybernetic warriors execute pre-programmed responses, but he's creating new strategies on the spot. The simulation increased in difficulty. Now Frank faced enemies that learned from his tactics, yet instead of relying on a single approach, he kept changing his methods, never becoming predictable. When direct combat was unavoidable, he used techniques that targeted weak points in his opponent's forms. By the halfway point, Frank's performance had captured everyone's attention. He wasn't the fastest or strongest competitor, but his adaptability and creativity made him fascinating to watch.
In the spectator area, Ambassador Krelvox sat with other Zenithian officials. His expression grew increasingly troubled as he watched the human perform. "This is concerning," he said to a colleague. "The human fighting style is unpredictable. If they ever developed military cybernetics, perhaps it is time to reconsider our approach to the humans," his colleague suggested. "They could be valuable allies rather than potential threats." Krelvox didn't respond, his eyes fixed on the combat arena. Frank was now deep into the simulation, facing scenarios that had eliminated several previous competitors. What became apparent was his endurance. While cybernetic systems began to show power depletion in extended scenarios, Frank simply adjusted his exertion level. When the simulation finally ended, Frank had achieved the third highest score overall, behind the Aldebaran champion and a competitor from a species that specialized in warfare. As he exited the arena, sweating but satisfied, the crowd's reaction was mixed. Some impressed, others clearly concerned. Later that day, the Olympic Committee announced the final event, a survival challenge on the nearby moon. Teams of 3 from each species would be transported to the surface and would need to navigate harsh terrain to reach an extraction point. The moon's unusual magnetic properties created additional challenges, potentially interfering with electronic systems. "This is where they expect us to fail," Captain Morrison told the human team during their planning session. "The environment is hostile to unprotected biological life forms. Most competitors will rely on their cybernetic systems for survival, which makes them vulnerable to the magnetic interference," noted Dr. Rivera. "While we'll have to worry about temperature and atmosphere, we won't lose our basic functions." Captain Morrison selected the team, Frank Delgado for his tactical skills, Maria Gonzalez for her wilderness survival expertise, and Dr. Rivera herself for medical knowledge. As they prepared their minimal equipment, Trazanar visited their quarters. "Must warn you," he said quietly. "There are concerns about your team's participation in the final challenge." "More sabotage?" Captain Morrison asked. "Perhaps, but there is something else. The magnetic storms on the moon are predicted to be unusually strong during the event. This information has not been shared with all teams." "Let me guess," said Frank. "The Aldebarans know." Trazanar nodded. "Their equipment has been specially shielded. Others have not been given the chance to prepare." "Why are you telling us this?" Dr. Rivera asked. "Because I have been studying your species," Trazanar replied. "Humans have faced extinction multiple times in your history, yet you survived through adaptation rather than cybernetic evolution. I believe that approach deserves a fair chance to prove its merit." Maria Gonzalez, who had been quietly checking her gear, looked up. "What exactly happens during these magnetic storms?" "Communication systems fail. Navigation becomes unreliable. Advanced cybernetics can malfunction or shut down completely." Maria smiled. "Then we'll navigate by the stars and communicate face to face, like humans have done for thousands of years." The next morning, the teams gathered at the transport bay. The Aldebaran team was clearly confident, their bodies gleaming with new modifications obviously designed for the challenge ahead. Other species looked nervous, checking and rechecking their equipment. The human team stood out in their simplicity, wearing only environmental suits with basic tools and supplies. No weapons, no advanced tech, just what they needed to survive. "Ambassador." Krelvox approached them before boarding. "Captain Morrison informed me you're continuing with the competition despite the warnings." "We've faced difficult environments before," Maria replied. Indeed. The ambassador's expression was unreadable. "The extraction point has been programmed into all navigation systems." "We have a paper map," Maria said, holding up a physical chart she had created based on the provided coordinates. Sometimes older technology is more reliable. As the teams boarded their transport vessels, Trazanar watched from the control room. Something about the situation troubled him deeply. He accessed the weather monitoring system for the moon and discovered that the predicted magnetic storm had been artificially upgraded in the system, made to appear much worse than actual readings indicated. Someone wanted the cybernetic systems, to fail catastrophically, not just malfunction. And Trazinar had a sinking feeling about who would benefit from such a disaster. The surface of the moon was a harsh landscape of jagged rocks and deep crevices under a black sky. The transport ships landed in different locations, each team facing a unique path to the extraction point 50 kilometers away. They had 24 hours to reach their destination. Maria Gonzalez led the human team out onto the surface, checking their environmental suits one last time. The gravity was lighter than Earth's, but the lack of atmosphere meant instant death without protection. Remember, she said to Frank and Dr. Rivera, conserve oxygen, watch your footing, and stay together. They moved carefully across the rocky terrain, Maria consulting her paper map and the position of the gas giant in the sky to maintain their direction. In the distance, they could see other teams moving more quickly, their cybernetic enhancements, allowing them to navigate the difficult landscape with mechanical precision. We're falling behind, Frank noted. Let them run, Maria replied. This isn't a sprint. 2 hours into the journey, the first signs of the magnetic storm appeared. Shimmering waves of energy flashed across the sky, beautiful but ominous. The human team watched as the distant figures of other competitors suddenly stopped or moved erratically. It's starting, Dr. Rivera said. Their systems are being affected. We need to pick up the pace, Maria decided. Other teams will be in trouble soon. They increased their speed, moving as quickly as safety allowed. As they crested a ridge, they saw an Aldebaran competitor standing completely still, their cybernetic systems flashing with error signals. Dr. Rivera approached cautiously. Are you functional? Do you need assistance? The Aldebaran's voice came through the communication system, filled with static. Systems rebooting. Navigation offline. Life support stable. We can help you reach the extraction point, Dr. Rivera offered. Negative, the Aldebaran replied firmly. No assistance required. Backup systems activating. The humans continued on, but within the next hour, they encountered more stranded competitors. Some had completely shut down, while others were moving, in wrong directions as their navigation systems failed. In orbit above the moon, Trazinar had taken control of the monitoring station. He watched with growing alarm as competitor after competitor experienced system failures. But what troubled him most was that the Aldebaran team seemed to be functioning better than expected, despite being heavily augmented. Something isn't right, he said to Captain Morrison, who had joined him in the control room. The storm is affecting everyone except the Aldebarans. They had advance warning, she reminded him. Yes, but this goes beyond preparation. It's as if... Trazinar paused, checking the readings again. It's as if they know exactly what frequencies the storm is operating on. Almost as if they created it. Captain Morrison finished his thought. Trazinar nodded slowly. We need to warn your team. On the surface, Maria, Frank, and Dr. Rivera had covered nearly half the distance to the extraction point. They came upon a disturbing sight. A group of competitors from various species huddled in a small crater, their systems failing and environmental controls fluctuating. We can't leave them, Dr. Rivera said immediately. If we help everyone, we'll never finish in time, Frank pointed out. Maria thought for a moment. We split up. Frank, you're the fastest. Continue to the extraction point and request additional rescue resources. Natalie and I will do what we can here. Frank nodded and continued on while the two women approached the stranded competitors. Among them was a high-ranking Zenithian and 2 members of species they hadn't met before. Our systems are failing, the Zenithian explained. Life support will only last another 3 hours. We can get you to the extraction point, Maria said, but we'll need to move soon. Dr. Rivera examined each competitor, making adjustments to their malfunctioning equipment using basic tools and her medical knowledge. I can't fix the cybernetics, but I can stabilize your biological systems, she explained. As they worked, their communication system crackled with a weak signal from Trazinar. Human team. Danger. Aldebarans. Storm is artificial. Sabotage. The message cut off, but its meaning was clear. The storm wasn't natural. and the Aldebarans were behind it. "We need to move now," Maria told the group. "Can everyone walk?" The Zenithian stood shakily. "I believe so, thanks to your doctor's assistance." They formed a small convoy, moving slowly across the lunar surface. Dr. Rivera continued to monitor the aliens' life signs, making adjustments when needed. Maria used her paper map and astronomical navigation to keep them on course. Meanwhile, Frank had made remarkable progress. His military training allowed him to move efficiently across the difficult terrain. He crested a final ridge and saw the extraction point below, a lit platform where several ships waited. Only one team had arrived before him, the Aldebarans. As Frank approached, he noticed something strange. The Aldebarans were gathered around a small device set up near the extraction point. One was making adjustments to it, and the machine pulsed with energy that matched the patterns in the sky. Frank realized immediately what he was seeing, the source of the artificial magnetic storm. He activated his suit's recording system and moved closer, staying behind rock formations for cover. In the control room, Trazinar and Captain Morrison watched Frank's video feed with growing concern. "They've sabotaged the entire competition," Captain Morrison said. "But why?" "To eliminate the competition," Trazinar realized. "If most teams fail, the Aldebarans enhance their standing, but more importantly, it discredits any species that doesn't rely on their type of cybernetic enhancements, including humans." Trazinar nodded. "Your natural approach threatens their technological supremacy. They can't allow it to be seen as viable." On the surface, Frank had to make a decision. He could either confront the Aldebarans or try to disable their device. Before he could act, he received a communication from Maria. They were leading a group of stranded competitors toward the extraction point, but moving slowly. Frank changed his plan. Instead of confronting the Aldebarans directly, he circled around to the waiting ships. Using his knowledge of basic mechanical systems, he began preparing one for immediate launch. By the time Maria's group arrived at the extraction point, Frank had a rescue ship ready. The Aldebarans watched with shock as the humans led a group of competitors whose systems had been completely disabled by the storm. "What is happening here?" demanded the Aldebaran team leader. "We could ask you the same question," Frank replied, pointing to their device, "especially about that." The evidence was clear. The Olympic officials who had arrived on a shielded vessel examined the device and the Aldebaran's specially modified cybernetics. The sabotage was undeniable. When all teams had been recovered from the surface, many saved by human-led rescue efforts, the Olympic Committee called an emergency session. The Aldebarans were disqualified, their standings in all events revoked. In a packed assembly hall, the head of the Olympic Committee, a being of ancient and respected lineage, addressed the gathered species. "These games have revealed something unexpected," the official announced. "The human approach, maintaining biological systems while using technology as a tool rather than a replacement, has demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability." Trazinar stepped forward. "I propose a new research initiative, one that studies the integration of technology without sacrificing biological adaptability, and I invite the humans to lead this effort." Ambassador Krelvox, who had been noticeably quiet throughout the proceedings, finally spoke. "The Zenithian Confederation supports this proposal. Perhaps we have become too dependent on our enhancements." Captain Morrison looked at her team, the athletes and specialists who had proven humanity's worth on the galactic stage. "Earth would be honored to participate in such an initiative. We have much to learn from each other." As the assembly concluded, Dr. Rivera found herself standing next to a young Zenithian child who had been watching the proceedings with curious eyes. "Can humans really think without processors?" the child asked. "We can," Natalie replied with a smile. "Would you like me to teach you how?"